All right, let me give you something to think about on the actuarial side of Medicare Advantage that a lot of agents, I would say, assume that if one area of the country has better Medicare Advantage benefits than another, it's because Medicare must pay that area more based on utilization. And there is county level funding that is correct, but that's not the whole story. You can have two areas that have very similar reimbursement and still have very different benefits baked into the MA. So what's actually driving this? This is Ansall, probably a 5-minute Medicare minute. So it's not just about how much Medicare pays, it's about how predictable and controllable that population is. So there's some areas like in Las Vegas or San Francisco or Miami that have really strong MA benefits and extras added to the plans, but neighboring counties with similar reimbursements don't have those. When an MA carrier is planning their plans, they're not just asking what's the average out of pocket or cost in an area. They want to know how confident their actuaries are in that cost. Because you could have two markets side by side that on paper look the same but behave very different in reality. So in a more stable market, you're going to tend to see more predictable utilization with consistent referral patterns and very strong coordination of care and much fewer surprises. And what that does is it allows a carrier to bid more aggressively against a benchmark and use those extra dollars for benefits. But then in a neighboring county that may be a less predictable market, you're going to see much wider swings in utilization with more specialist leakage and less coordinated care and much higher variability in cost. So the carrier has to price more conservatively in that area, which means fewer dollars less left for extra benefits. And then if you layer in provider alignment, in some areas you may have a much larger physician group or value-based contract and doctors who are actively managing their cost and outcomes. Well, it creates a more controlled environment for the MA, and carriers can trust that system more, right? And then in other areas, you may have much more fragmented providers with less coordination and a lot more fee-for-service behavior, and that creates uncertainty, and uncertainty then limits how aggressive a plan can be. There's also a strategic element to it. Carriers, they don't just operate in markets, they choose to compete. In some zip codes, a carrier may be trying to grow aggressively and are willing to take much tighter margins and invest in richer benefits. And in other areas, they may have more of a defensive posture, protecting what margin they have and managing their risk and not pushing growth or even cutting agent compensation. And then when you look at those two areas and ask why the benefits are better in one area and not the other, it's not just because of the reimbursement, it's about how predictable that area is and the provider alignment and the carrier's actual strategy in that zip code or that county in that state. Once you understand that, you're going to see MA differently. It's not just about a plan, it's quite literally a system built around the environment or the county that it operates in.